Hello and welcome to our weekly IG Live. Sorry, we were having a little technical problem there, and hopefully we can get that sorted out. We are going to be talking to Moni Ritchie Hadley today, and she is the author of the brand new book, Anzu and the Art of Friendship, which uses origami as a way to talk about friendship and how friendship takes work. And she's also the author of the Star Festival. And we're having a little technical problems, but hopefully we can get this started now. Hello. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't know if that was on my end or your end, but
I
hopefully.
started to hear a replay of
Oh.
myself talking, so I'm not sure what happened.
Well, let's just start over. So you were talking about how when your daughter was born, you fell in love with picture books again and just the art form of picture books.
Yeah, I did. I think it reminded me of when I was a child and I was just, that time where books were just discoveries, As I got older, like second or third grade, reading became a little more difficult for me. So I think it was a combination of like my eyes going bad, and I'm kind of like more of a creative thinker rather than somebody who can hold a lot of information in my head. And reading became very measured at school, and so it became more difficult at that time. So when I started reading picture books to my daughter, it just really took me back to the books that I had when I was a kid. And it was really early on too, because we started moving quite often, and then those books would disappear. Toys and books would just disappear because we didn't bring them back and forth. So.
That's interesting. I love that you bring that up about. I think a lot of times we can make reading less fun as children get older. I mean, obviously, there are different issues going on. People might have different learning challenges, but also I think we sometimes make it work instead of fun. And I think you're right. Picture books tend to be more associated with just fun and reading for pleasure. But I'm also interested in how you come from. You have a background in psychology and education, and so when you did, you kind of fell in love with picture books again. What gave you the motivation to make that leap and said, okay, I'm gonna focus on, I'm gonna be an author now, and to make such a big transition?
It didn't really feel like a big transition to me, because my daughter was just like, she just rambles, and those ideas just stuck in my head. And kids are just so entertaining, and they're brutally honest. Like my daughter would say stuff like, well, I just want to do what I want to do. And we all feel that, but adults would not say that. Kids say that. So I've always loved being around kids, and I've always been a creative too, not always in writing, but in high school and college, I danced, not professionally, but just because I liked it. Did a little bit of acting. I played in some bands for a little while, wrote music. So when it came time, I had to be a mom. I couldn't be like playing shows at 11 at night and then, maintaining that lifestyle. So it was a natural shift to start writing children's books, I think.
I love that. What a great creative outlet. I love how you were able to take this love that you had and adapt it to your new lifestyle, you know. And so I know you're half Japanese and you describe yourself as a military brat. And I'm just curious because you have this background of being kind of in between places, in between cultures, kind of partly here, partly there. And do you think that gave you a different perspective as far as writing about cultures, learning, learning about different cultures?
Absolutely. I did feel that as a child. I felt like I existed in two worlds, and constantly readjusting, trying to discover who I am, find my place. But there came a point, about fifth or sixth grade, I was in Japan for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and that really started to feel like home to me. I'm 11 years old, maybe, started to feel like home. We lived off the base, so we were immersed in Japanese community, but we went to school on base to an English speaking school. And at that time, you know, I'm preteen. I did not want to move. That was my home. But my dad retired from the Marine Corps at that time. And so we moved all the way to Southern California to Orange County. And that was like culture shock to me. I experienced major culture shock, and it took me a while to acclimate to my surroundings there. But I did, and at that time there wasn't a lot of diversity there. You know, I didn't really consciously think of that at the time. You just go where your parents, you know, take you, and you live. But now reflecting, I can see that. So at the time when I started college and I moved to Los Angeles for college, like a whole new world opened up. I fell in love with LA, and I knew this would be the place that I would live, because there were people from all over the place that looked very different. I would sometimes just get in my car and go driving around, like looking at neighborhoods, you know, just very, very different places. And that was really important to me. It became important to me. And then as I became a teacher, you know, my experiences and my background really played into forming connections with my students, students from different places, or different, and I say places, could be, you know, different places from on the map, but also from a different state of mind, because I worked with kids who had were going through physical struggles, mental struggles, and in order to be able to connect with them, you know, they had to know that I came from a place of understanding. So there was there's a place called the Ronald McDonald House, which is across the street from the Children's Hospital here, and they get kids from other parts of the country or the world that need treatment here. So it's like a hospice house that they provide for them to stay. And the opportunities there were pretty amazing too, because I got to work with kids, even with a language barrier. I got to work with kids from Japan, China, Taiwan, Saudi Arabia, India, Nigeria, you know, from all over the world. And I think my background really helped me, enabled me to you know, work with those kids. And so so now, you know, with my stories, I'm really trying to like bridge this the authenticity of Japan, and balance it with, well, what are kids who are not from here going to want to know about this country, you know, and keep that balance there.
I love how you've done that. So, I mean, first talking about the Star Festival, which is so beautiful in the way that it explains like the history of the festival and the story behind it, but also, like you said, in a way that that kids would be interested in. Like kids would want to know, well, how do they wrap the obi and put that on, and what are the foods, and you know, all this kind of things, the sights and the sounds. It's totally how a kid would experience it. And I know that you've said that you write to help children experience beauty, delight, and wonder. Why is that such an important thing for childhood, and how do your books encourage that?
Well, those are the books that I'm drawn to. So if you could see the books that are on my shelf behind me, you know, beauty is huge. If there is an illustrator that I follow, I will most likely just buy their book, you know, just looking at the cover. And you know, I want children to be aware of that. You know, we spend so much time on our screens just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and beauty and wonder is important. I want them to look out their window and stare out the clouds. You know, my dad used to make fun of me for doing that. He just used to say, you know, that I'm a daydreamer or whatever, staring at the clouds, but it's really important. And you know, if something is delightful and like tickles me, then I want to read that book too. But picking up a book is such an intentional act, you know. It's not like looking at a screen. It's not like watching TV. A child picks up a book, and you know whether they like it or not. They'll just toss it aside if they don't like it. And then as they turn the page, each page turn is a deliberate act. They want to know, what are they going to see? What are they going to discover? What are they going to learn? And it's just such a, all of that has to be present for me, beauty, and just the wondering. For me, it's having a child experience culture, but for other books, it might be a how-to or STEM related or whatever. It's all really important.
I love that, and I love that idea that it's such an intentional act. And especially you're talking about kids, they're so honest. If they turn the page, they're doing it because they want to they want to do it. They want to keep reading. They're not going to do it otherwise. And I wanted to talk, speaking of beauty, your beautiful new book. And I love that, so you've incorporated Japanese culture, especially talking about art and talking about origami. How did you get this idea to use origami as a way to talk about being persistent, like not being afraid of making mistakes, but keeping on trying, but also then kind of take that to the idea about friendship and how friendship takes work also? How did you come up with that idea as a way to talk about those things?
Well, this book, Anzu and the Art of Friendship, the original idea or the original origami concept came from Albert Whitman. They actually approached me to write the story. So they had base guidelines. And so as I started to work on this concept, I was folding origami. I was refamiliarizing myself with origami. And I was also writing and revising my manuscripts. So the themes started to come out. First, the friendship theme, because that is my background. I moved so many times and I was constantly trying to make new friends. And then the patience and persistence and mistakes and failures, that comes from the actual folding of origami. Because I remember teaching it sometimes as a teacher. I remember the frustration the kids had, and I wanted to go through that myself, because there are many figures that I can't even figure out, and I did get frustrated. And sometimes my folds aren't good, and some I gave up on, and I tried others. And it's such a, origami just lends itself to these themes because it's such a deliberate, it's such a deliberate craft. Like, there's a model and you're trying to emulate it, but you have to slow down. You really have to slow down and be mindful and be present to achieve it. And mistakes and failure, the kids get frustrated in the book, but mistakes and failure only have meaning if you set yourself a goal and you attach that meaning to it. Like, if I folded this and I say it's a seal, then it's a seal. If I say it's a bird, then it's a bird. If I say it's a lamppost, it's a lamppost. If I attach no goals to it, right? But the minute I say, well, I want this to look exactly like that picture, or I want everybody in the room to know that this is a seal, then all of a sudden, if it's not done right, then I've made a mistake. But that mistake or that failure, it's a step in the right direction. Because what happens with that is you start to question, well, why isn't this a lamppost? Or why does it look like that lamppost? Oh, it's not, the width is a little wonky here, or it needs to be a little more uniform. There's this little thing here that doesn't really resemble, what I see out there. And all those questions and wondering and discoveries start to help you formulate where you want to be. So it's the process that's really important. And origami is a great craft for that, to bring awareness to that.
Right, and you see that through the book as the kids are trying to, and the little girl's trying to help them because she already knew how to do origami, and that the pages don't line up correctly. I mean, the corners don't line up or something, or and she's trying to tell them. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is, to me, part of it is about these kids learning to, like you said, to be mindful, to fix mistakes and try and work through that frustration. But in a way, you don't address this directly, but in a way it's kind of appreciating a different culture. Here they are learning something that is literally foreign to them, and they're trying to do it. And at first they don't really take the time for it, and maybe they make fun of it, or maybe they, you know, kind of using them, that they scribble on the pages, or they use scissors, and the little girl is kind of horrified at all the things that they're doing, and yet her grandfather is teaching her to, you know, to be patient with them and help work with them. So it's also kind of a way of kind of talking about how you expose kids to different cultures, and how, and like teaching it respectfully and so on.
Yeah, it's you know, it's interesting because they do these things. They're not aware, you know, they're learning about it, but they're not aware of maybe the rules of origami. And Anzu is, so she thinks that, you know, if somebody uses scissors and snips off a piece of the white because they didn't line it up properly, she's horrified by that. But it's all a learning process, and so she's learning also. There's like an understanding that's happening there, and you know, really what happens is that she finds another way to connect with them, because, you know, she thought this would be her way to bond with her classmates, since she can help them. That's her way of attempting. But it's really when she kind of recognizes who the people in her classroom are,
Mm.
and finds more meaning in the origami and offers that to them, that she does form that connection. Because you know, the kids just don't know. Like they're innocently saying things like, you know, well, I know how to fold origami, or I know how to fold paper, you know, and and um, so I think that's an important lesson.
And the main person who is helping her learn this is the grandfather. And this and the Star Festival both really highlight intergenerational relationships. Why was that so important to you to include that in the books?
Um, you know, my mom came to live with me about 6 years ago. So it's been such a great experience, and really eye-opening for me. I didn't know if I would ever be able to live with my mom again, or if that would happen. And I think about my grandparents, and I didn't know them that well. You know, I have so many questions for them now. I wish I did. We were moving all the time. They were far away. And with my Japanese grandparents, there's language barrier also. So I have so many questions for them. And if I, you know, if I can get kids to make those connections, if they live close to their grandparents, I think that is so great. There's so much to be learned. We have 3 generations of people living in my home, and there's so much to be learned. My mom has, you know, is 89 years old. She has so much wisdom, and some of the things that she used to say that I may have rolled my eyes at, I don't roll my eyes at anymore, you know. And she has stories about her family, you know, the stories that she can remember that she's helping me with. I ask her questions about my books, or Japanese culture and language, and she lights up. She wants to help me. When my daughter has a lot to offer her too. Just being here brings her joy
Mm.
and happiness. She has companionship. And for myself, it's just watching the narratives change. You know, my mom came to the United States as an immigrant, and she was struggling to make ends meet. And we were moving all the time, and she was having a hard time. She had 4 kids. And now, you know, she's a sweet older lady and happy in her surroundings. And she does stained glass every day, makes lamps. And I there's some understanding that comes from watching this whole process, watching my mom's life, you know, from the beginnings of you know, when I was growing up to now. And I understand why she did the things that she did, where she came from. It makes sense, you know. And if she didn't come to live with me, or if I didn't spend that time with her, I wouldn't have been able to discover these things.
I love that. I think there's just kind of natural tension built into the parent-child relationship, especially at the phase when you're, you know, raising them, because that just seems to be built into that. And yet with a grandparent child, it seems like they don't have that the same kind of burdens and responsibilities and obligations, and so they can really just enjoy each other. And like you said, your mom's already kind of been through that phase of her life, and now she's in a different phase. And I'm sure that has an effect on your relationship with her that would have been different when you were a child, you know, because of just being at a different phase of life. And I love that you're bringing that into your books and helping kids appreciate that. I know that's something probably more, I would say, appreciated in Japanese culture. I think our culture, the American culture, doesn't really value older people. You know, we're all about youth and young people, and which is also good. Like you said, you know, like your daughter really brings a lot of joy to your mother, but at the same time, I think we really undervalue what older people have to contribute. So I love that you highlight that in the book, and maybe that can help kids have a different perspective.
Yeah, I really didn't think about it until it came time to, you know, my mom having to give up her home. And I didn't really know where I sat with that, you know, well, what's the best option for my mom? Is it a home, or is it, you know, living with one of us, or, you know, but when it came time, it just felt right for my mom to move in. And you're so right about, you know, the grandparent grandchild relationship. It's once they're not a parent anymore, my mom at least just feels like, oh, those responsibilities are gone. And it's the good stuff, you know, it's the good stuff that they can share, and not just the day-to-day, you know, routine stuff. That's for me to take care of. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we're coming up on time, so I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock also. So I thought we could wrap up. I thought I saw that you have a new book coming out next spring also. I mean, I know we're just in the midst of it. It hasn't been very long since your most recent book came out, but can you tell us about what else you have, either that you're working on or that is going to be coming out soon?
Yes, my next book is called Miso Magic, and this came out of my discussions with my mom as well. So I'm super happy about that. So my mom, it was kind of an investigation as to why my mom doesn't like beans. So she eats some beans, but not most beans. And so I started quizzing her about this, and it turns out that she had to work in her father's miso production business. And she had to do really hard physical labor mashing those beans. So she just developed a dislike for it. So that was kind of ruminating in my head. And I wrote this story about a girl who has to work in the miso house with her father rather than go play in the snow in the mountains. But she discovers through the secrets of the miso making that the real umami is in forming those bonds with her father. So, yeah. So, and then other things that I'm working on, I'm going through the process of learning illustration. I really want to be able to write and illustrate my own books. So I'm in that process. I'm frustrated, I'm happy, I'm all the above. Everything we talked about today, I'm there, and I'm trying to learn it.
Well, that is so exciting. I mean, exciting. I'm excited for your book that just came out and the one that's going to be. And that is so exciting that I love that you're challenging yourself to learn something completely, this whole completely new process. So that's wonderful.
Always, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody that's watching. As I mentioned before, we'll have this up on Instagram in just a few minutes, and then later on our YouTube channel. And Moni, thank you for joining us. It was so great to talk with you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.